Hi everyone, welcome to the Elendi Files, where we navigate the complexities of the global regulatory landscape of medical products. Our goal is to help make global medical product regulations accessible to everyone. So whether you're a manufacturer, intermediary, or regulatory specialist, or a CEO of a MedTech startup, you're in the right place. Be sure to connect with us on LinkedIn and our website, ElendiLabs.com. This is Teddy, the General Manager of ElendiLabs at ElendiLabs. We're all about connecting clients, be it medical product manufacturers, medtech startups, biotech startups, with the right regulatory expertise to get products to people faster. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Heena from VidyaRA, a firm that helps to impart technical knowledge or expertise and empowering regulatory professionals to keep abreast of regulatory updates. We're going to be spending some time learning more about the RA training field. Heena, thanks for being here to kick things off. Could you give us a brief introduction of what VidyaRA specializes in?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Teddy. It's wonderful to be here on your platform, and it's absolutely wonderful to see how you bring professionals together. So let me first start with my introduction, and then I'll also speak a little bit about what my brand does in the regulatory technical knowledge spreading space. So my name is Heena Thakkar. I am a MedTech regulatory professional. I have more than a decade of experience in medical devices, regulatory affairs function. I majored in regulatory affairs from one of the top universities, which is Northeastern University in Boston, United States. That's how I entered this profession. So my academic kind of builds a very strong foundation for what I do even today. I was fortunate enough to start into MedTech devices from the company called Zimmer Biomet, wherein I got hands-on opportunities to work on EU MDR regulatory requirements for interpreting the requirements for the organization and assessing the impact of all those global level regulatory requirements for the global sites for Zimmer Biomet back in time. This was around 2016. So that's how I got introduced to EU MDR requirements, and I, very early on got the idea of how regulatory affairs impacts the entire business whenever there is any shift into regulatory affairs or whenever there are any changes. So I was very fortunate enough to get a place in the core committee itself back in the day. And I kind of worked on implementing the quality management systems for regulatory affairs as well as clinical affairs functions for all the global sites of Zimmer Biomet. And after that, I made a conscious decision to move back to my country because I have been very, very passionate about building regulatory capability ecosystem in my home country basis all the global level experiences that I have. After moving back to India, I picked up a job at a startup consulting firm wherein I spent close to 5 years doing all the groundwork, starting from creating templates to helping prepare technical documentation. That's where I got introduced to deeper layers of regulatory compliances, including risk management, US FDA requirements, as well as quality management system implementation. So again, I was very fortunate enough to work on projects that varied significantly from quality to regulatory to clinical. And that sort of brought a lot of diversity in what I do today. So that's where I decided to launch my own brand called VidyaRA Trainings and MedTech Consulting. So even though it says trainings as well as MedTech Consulting, I primarily focus on providing technical trainings because I believe when you share knowledge, it's only when you grow. So here I am with my brand VidyaRA.
Well, it's good to know more about your backstory. But you just mentioned that you took up an RA job in the US, and then you came back to India where you also engaged in RA job. But I'm wondering, um, if there is like a huge difference between the regulatory landscape in the US
Yeah.
and India.
Yeah, certainly. So it's quite different, you know. I mean, you know, when you see US regulatory professionals and, you know, when you discuss with them, you hear a lot about many different arms of regulatory affairs, which is beyond only regulatory submissions. Uh, you know, it's something that they recognize as a business function, as a strategic function. I'm sure there are differences in the West as well, but then largely, if I have to compare two different continents, then there is definitely a significant difference in how professionals operate there and how professionals treat this function. Versus if you see this in, you know, Asian side of the world, wherein the regulatory systems are still evolving. We are still focusing more on harmonization. We are still chasing what has already been established, and we are still, you know, at some point scratching the surface. So while we are still evolving in terms of our regulatory scenarios, the operations differ significantly. There is one side wherein we still see this as a back-end function, wherein the large part of regulatory function is about submissions and preparing documentation. I see a lot of development in terms of how the systems are evolving basis international and regional harmonization, and how you know, cross countries align with each other's regulatory frameworks. But we're still far away from how Western countries treat regulatory function.
Okay, but does VidyaRA provide services both in the US and India?
So VidyaRA primarily focuses on regulatory capability system, wherein my philosophy is very clear: fundamentals first. I come across many professionals who, you know, still try to understand what regulatory affairs is. What does this function do? Because sometimes it can feel very, very overwhelming as to it's the regulatory professional who is doing audit. At the same time, it's the same regulatory professional preparing for submissions, and sometimes it's the same professional who is preparing for documentation, which probably does not even belong to them. So I want to focus more on fundamentals first philosophy, and then at the same time, I also provide you know, advanced technical subjects wherein I talk about ISO 13485, how to be an effective internal auditor, how to implement risk management correctly, how do you build usability engineering and all of that. So there are these different cross-functional layers that could be considered within the regulatory affairs role itself. So I try and focus on that as well. So for me, it's not limited to, you know, one country requirement, but I try and focus on something that is considered global, something that is considered essentials in regulatory affairs function, which could be needed regardless of whether you're doing this from India, whether you're doing this from US or any European country, or probably anywhere in the world.
So you're saying that your VidyaRA is actually providing like fundamentals, basic concepts about RA. So that
So I have like two arms into it. One that focuses on essentials of regulatory affairs, and the other arm would focus on advanced technical trainings.
Also, one is so there are like two tiers. The first tier is like the rudimentary fundamental part,
Right.
and then the second part is for some more advanced users or some more advanced learners. Okay.
Right. And I want to provide this distinction because not everyone would need to know about everything, right? I mean, if you talk about management, or if you talk about you know, human resources function, they still need to know fundamentals of regulatory affairs for them to do their job efficiently and effectively. But they do not necessarily need to be an auditor to run the company. So it's very important to, you know, understand the needs of the trainees and what they're looking for, because it can go haywire if you're not very sure of, you know, what you're providing. So I just want to make sure that I keep that clear distinction as to, do you want to cover the essentials or do you want to really take a deep dive into a particular technical subject?
So you can also like tailor make the training
Mm-hmm.
courses for different clients. I'm wondering about the client basis of VidyaRA. Where do the clients come from, and then do they usually come from like SMEs or startups, or yeah, and any like cases that you would like to
Mm-hmm.
share with us? Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. So largely the clients would include medical device companies, wherein it will be, sometimes a mixed group of people coming from different functions. So it could have, people from HR, it could have people from QC or any quality assurance related functions. And surely it will have regulatory professionals with varied amount of experiences. So depending on what the topic is, and depending on what their training objectives are, the audiences typically vary. Sometimes it will be a very small group of, let's say, 3 to 4 people who are only SMEs who are looking to probably get another perspective from somebody who has done it, or somebody who is, still not sure about the things that they do. So they want a very practical led solution. So with every client, the needs vary. And that's exactly where VidyaRA specializes, because I focus on personalized training solutions, wherein I would highly recommend the client to discuss what their learning objectives are and what their training objectives are, to discuss upfront so that I can tailor made the training contents for them. And that, I think, makes the training experience more effective. So because I'm a professional trainer, I can now differentiate between technical knowledge delivery versus actually providing training and actually clarifying their concepts. Some trainers you would see would, just come on the floor and read from the slides and blabber all about the regulatory requirements, versus some trainers who would not probably, look at their presentations and really focus on very, very practical approaches. So it's all about what the client wants, and it's all about what kind of experience do they want. Because for me, VidyaRA believes in giving them the right experience more than doing slide reading.
Great. I can tell from your experience that you're very well accomplished in the field of trainings, that you can
Mm-hmm.
actually adjust the training content or the courses so that
Mm-hmm.
the company or individuals can benefit and really get what they want from the course. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Right.
I'm wondering if you have any recent cases or any cases in particular that you would like to share with us, and you might find the experience quite rewarding, and
Yeah.
even the interaction between you and the trainees uh, and quite unforgettable. Maybe there might be some experience like that.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So I think I would definitely pick up the example wherein I recently conducted a series of 3-day event,
Really.
focusing on quality management systems and internal auditing techniques. So because first of all, it's a 3-day event, trainees usually feel very, very overwhelming because nobody would like to sit, 8 hours long for 3 consecutive days, compromising their routine work. But I wanted to make sure that I, address their training objectives, and I make sure that I keep them very well engaged. So we kind of got on a call together, and we discussed what the client would want and why are they arranging this training, and where is the exact gap that they want to fulfill. So I had taken a note of that particularly, and it was clients' persistent request to keep the training very, very engaging. So of course, I had all the training materials to hand out to them, but at the same time, I had specifically curated case studies and real life scenarios from my experiences and from all the situations that I have faced so far as a regulatory professional, I had prepared those scenarios to make sure that I keep them engaged. And it turned out that after completing 3 days of event, I got a feedback from senior professionals and non-RA professionals that they really felt very, very engaged for all the assessments and evaluations that I had prepared. But at the same time, what they told me was that if there were additional 2 days, they wouldn't mind sitting in the training. So it became that engaging. And for me, it was very, very rewarding as a trainer because I put in a lot of efforts in curating training contents and making sure that training is effective. So, yeah.
May I know more about like the details of the company, or is it like a a startup or a medium-sized company, and what?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely categorize that as a medium-sized company who has been into the business for other segments, but probably they were new to medical devices, so they wanted to scratch the surface and they wanted to really take a feel of what are the compliance related aspects for medical device industry. So we spoke a lot about not only quality management systems but then domestic and international regulatory requirements as well, because quality management system is only the beginning for any medical device company's success.
Okay. Um, you also mentioned that some non-RA people or colleagues also join the training. How exactly did the training help them, or even contribute to their success at their company?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So because the topic was such that they had to right away implement what they learned. So, as I said, it was about quality management system and internal auditing. Of course, after the end of the day, when you spend so much time sitting into these highly technical trainings, you want to go back and you want to relook at your systems. And if you're starting off, you want to make sure that you're implementing all that you have learned. So I'm sure it was a lot of practical led discussion wherein they came up every day with their doubts and with all the revisions of the previous day, and they asked very practical questions as to how am I going to implement this into my system. So it was the day-to-day discussions that we did during those 3-day event must have helped them feel more accomplished. um, so I'm assuming that they are, because this is a very recent example, I'm assuming that they are, implementing their, learnings from the training and they are updating their systems. At the same time, I always believe and I always encourage medical device companies and whoever, takes these technical trainings to not treat this as a one-time effort, but rather keep going back to the subjects and discussions and evaluations to revise, because every time you look at the same technical subject, you might come across a different query or you might come across a different perspective. So it's definitely not a one-time effort. So after trainer leaves the room, it becomes the responsibility of each individual trainee to kind of, do their homework on their own, or probably, engage into some sort of a training contract so that trainer is always in touch with the company or the professionals who need it the most.
So, yeah, I think it's a good takeaway that it's really up to the company's colleagues to
Mm-hmm.
take care of their QMS and their
Right.
the system for maintaining the QA system, the QMS, and how. But did you like um do uh, deliberately include a session where you could you told them to focus on like high level thinking, for example,
Mm-hmm.
any um, um, like requesting them to rethink
Mm-hmm.
and to potentially think of any um, gaps or any
Yeah.
insufficiencies in their current QMS, so that they can not just put out the fire. uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So do you like did you have such services, or did you include any such sections in the training, the 3-day trainings, to equip them with a sense of preparing in advance and preparing from a high level?
Right. Yeah. So for sure, I think a couple of contributing factors. Number one, you want to make sure that the trainees are equally excited, and not only you as a trainer, because otherwise it becomes very dull in the room. Second thing, what I make sure is whenever I engage myself into a multi-day workshop, which has to be, one topic or two to three closely knit topic, which is going to be discussed over a period of time again and again. I want to make sure that they, at the end of the day, they, take home practical messages, or they perform some sort of an MCQ based assessment before they show up on day 2. So that way, they are, starting to think about the topic that they are learning, and it's not only trainer talking and trainees listening kind of a scenario. The third factor, which is very important, is when, as a trainer, I curate my training materials, and specifically the assessments, I make sure that I include examples that are relevant to their product, because, medical device field is very diversified, and every medical device manufacturer is designing and manufacturing and playing a different role altogether. So I want to make sure that I align my training contents and evaluations as per how they understand, as per how they process, and what are their terminologies. And at the same time, I want to make sure that I give them the uh, experience that they require. So if I had to pick an example, when I'm training people on becoming effective internal auditors, I would want to make sure that I engage them into some sort of a role play, or probably I would ask them to come on the floor and present themselves in front of everybody. And then I would put them into a difficult spot as to how to not treat their colleagues as friends, because they are always together, so they are comfortable. But then I ask them to treat them as auditee or auditor. So, that's how they kind of break the barrier and think beyond their comfort zone.
Well, I didn't expect like a role playing game would be involved in a training, but it just sounds quite interesting, because it's rare
Mm-hmm.
for such professional trainings to include like role play. Oh, it's fun, but it's the era of AI, and many
Mm-hmm.
clients might. I'm just trying to walk into the shoes of your potential clients. Some clients might be thinking that AI could actually teach them like a lot. They could Google
Mm-hmm.
about the RA insights, and they could always ask like ChatGPT or Claude
Yeah.
about the latest regulatory updates, and how
Mm-hmm.
VidyaRA differentiates itself from all those AI platforms. Yeah, any specialties, or anything special about the training provided by VidyaRA?
Yeah, absolutely. This is my favorite topic because I myself am a pro AI user, and I'm a certified AI professional as well. So I'm definitely not against using AI, and I myself use AI for knowledge updates, and for revalidating my thinking, and sometimes quickly clarifying what I know. So it definitely enables more knowledge, faster knowledge, but at the same time, AI is not human. So AI is not going to give you real life experiences that one human will give to the other humans. So I see a lot of entry-level professionals, who are still trying to get up to the speed of what this profession is about, might get addicted to, let me just do ChatGPT and let me just, search it out. I don't want to invest so much into professional trainings. So it's, good for, preliminary or rudimentary level understanding. It is also good for, giving you different perspectives, because sometimes it really boosts you up. It, really enhances and elevates your thinking, but it's not the only solution. So I would definitely encourage professionals to be extremely careful when they're using AI, but I'm also not someone old-fashioned who would say AI is useless. If you use AI as a collaborator, it can definitely elevate your expertise. So for me, AI is all about collaboration and not about human replacement.
Great. I think most people might ignore the fact that AI or Google or ChatGPT, these platforms or models, they don't really have a lot of hands-on experience or cases, real cases that they have handled before. Because I also held several interviews with other consultancies, and I also found that I was like a complete novice to regulations in other countries, but I can always ask ChatGPT about regulations in other countries, and I can, but some of them are, I mean, the information, I think it's like at least 70 to 80% accurate, but for some information, especially the real cases, for example, how the health authority thinks, the mindsets, and then the actual hands-on experience, the timelines, the actual technical difficulties that they met for a specific project. These are the details and information that AI can't provide. So I'm wondering if VidyaRA actually has these information included in its training, if the client, there is such request from clients. Do you have
totally, especially when I'm doing virtual trainings and when I'm handing out the assessments and workshops, I have started putting this disclaimer that you're free to use AI. Sometimes I clearly say do not use AI and use your own thinking, but then especially when I have Gen Zs included in my trainings, and especially when I know that the person is eventually going to use AI, I give them a free hand and say, hey, look, you can use AI, but apply your thinking, apply whatever you just learned, and probably try and do the right prompting at the same time. So sometimes it becomes very, very challenging because, those professionals who are smart, who have the knowledge, who have done it before, will use the AI correctly, and they can do the same thing without AI. For example, if I had to, write about, let's say, quality policy, or if I had to set some quality objectives for a particular function, ChatGPT or Gemini could definitely help me and get that done in 5 minutes. But then how am I going to make sure that these are smart objectives? How am I going to make sure that they align with regulatory requirements? And how am I particularly going to make sure that that's right for my company, So all these things need to be validated at the same time. So I have definitely started, encouraging the use of AI, but not the blind use of AI. So there is a very thin line difference between the two. And when somebody just presents me AI enhanced or AI assisted homework, I would just know that in a second, because if I ask them to repeat the same thing right in front of me without using AI, they kind of start struggling in between. So it's definitely a blind spot there.
I think to most people, AI should act as a tool, and then people should be able to tell the quality of the work produced by AI.
Correct.
so that they can
Correct.
really
Yes.
grasp the use of
Yeah,
AI.
absolutely. Especially because, our profession is very, very sensitive and it is very business oriented, and, it is all about safety of patients at the end of the day. So if ourselves as regulatory professionals are not, understanding accurate information, it can have its own complications into the business.
Well, great. And thank you so much, Heena, for sharing your insights with us today. And for everyone listening or reading the transcript, we'll be featuring, VidyaRA as a vendor specialist firm on our platform. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you on the platform. And if you haven't checked out our website, please head to ElendiLabs.com. Be sure to connect with us on LinkedIn.